All right, and we're back. We're here talking to the incoming Executive Director of Finance and Services, Devin Grant. He'll be starting that position, signing the checks May 1st. He's the science rep on the MUNSU Board of Directors right now, so he'll be expanding his repertoire a little bit in the next year or so. So, Devin, great to have you on the show.
Thanks very much for having me on.
Thanks for coming, Devin.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, all right, so for anyone who doesn't know you, do you want to talk a little bit about your experience in the student movement and with MUNSU in general?
Yeah, totally. So I've been on the board for a year, currently on as one of the 4 Faculty of Science reps. And I've had the opportunity to serve on a bunch of committees in the university at that time, which has been one of the things that's really driven me in terms of representing students. So I've been sitting on Science Society, which is a group of science students representative from the various academic societies throughout the campus. And we meet with the Associate Dean and Dean of Science on a fairly regular basis. Also, I sit on Faculty Council of Science, and my main committee that I sit on, I guess, would be Senate Committee Undergraduate Studies, which is kind of the main decision-making body for undergraduate regulations and things like that. Right. So that's a really great chance to really advocate for students.
Definitely, definitely.
So, could you maybe explain just a little bit about the position, what the role of Executive Director of Finance and Services actually does, and then what we'll go from there is incorporate maybe your goals
for the
upcoming year?
Yeah, totally. So in terms of what the position does, you know, as the name suggests, there's obviously kind of 2 sides to the portfolio. So on the finance side, the main thing is developing the budget, dealing with the finances of the union, and the main thing that you have to do on that side of things is just really communicate with students and make sure that the budget is accurately reflecting the priorities that the student body has, to make sure that, you know, their money is going to the things that are going to benefit them the most and things they want to see being developed the most. On the services side of things, you know, it's dealing with the services of the union. So things like, you know, the attic, the breezeway here at CHMR, walk safe, safe drive, you know, the list goes on. Just making sure that those are running as effectively as possible, and making sure that they're offering the products and services the students want to see. The entire job, as with, you know, most of the positions on the board, I think really comes down to making sure that the union is doing what students want to see it doing.
Absolutely. And so, what are the goals that you're trying to incorporate into that position for your first or your term as the?
Yeah, there are some new services that I'm really interested in trying to introduce, and these are things that I talked about a bit on the campaign trail as well. So things like introducing a used bookstore is probably the one that got the biggest positive response on the campaign trail. You know, students, I think, really want to see an outlet where they can save time and money with their textbooks. So that's something that I really like to see getting into place. There are some things that I talked about, like getting a tutor registry set up. Students can get help with their courses more easily. Also, there are some other things that I really want to work on in conjunction with the university, so things like getting cell phone chargers around campus. I want to also take a look at the recreation fee, which right now I think a lot of students don't really like the way it works, how, you know, you have to pay whenever you're enrolled, and then if you're not enrolled over the summer, you don't have to pay extra if you want to go to the gym, and it's really not tailored to what students want right now. So if we could see some change to that, I think that would be great.
Definitely. So that's great. I definitely like the idea of the used bookstore, because I feel like, I mean, if I'm getting a used book for $90, that's kind of weak. So what about some of the current services? You know, the breezeway here at CHMR. What are some of your plans for those? Yeah,
totally. The main one, obviously, is food in the breezeway. You know, that's one of the big things that everybody talks about. You know, by the time that I'm done in the position, I want to see some kind of food down there. Whether or not we've gotten all the way to a restaurant at that point, we'll have to see. That's definitely a lengthy process that takes a lot of time and development.
Oh, absolutely.
But I don't think there's anything stopping us from getting some kind of food services down there, you know, sometime throughout the next year. So that's definitely a big one. In terms of the attic, just doing some product surveys and seeing what students want to see in there. And also I really want to talk to the staff of all of our services and the people who use our services. You know, so people like you guys running radio shows at CHMR, and just see what sort of the little things are that when you're looking at a broad overview of it, you might miss. Whereas if you talk to the people who are using it every day and who are working there every day, they're going to see the day-to-day things that need to be touched on and could be improved that could really help. So, for example, I've been talking to the staff over at the attic saying they really need a new POS. That's point of sale for anyone who doesn't know, and saying how they could really use 2 caches over there instead of 1 to really speed up service.
Oh, I think they could.
Yeah, so there's things like that that at a broad overview you might miss. So I think that talking to staff and talking to the people who use the services could really help us to really streamline those things.
Right.
So you seem to have put a lot of thought into this, Devin. So I'm curious, kind of just like why the student movement and why this job and where does your passion derive from? And does that have anything to do with like kind of your future and stuff like that? Like why? Because it's a really powerful thing.
No, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my trail to MUNSU, I guess, was a little winding. It started out with stuff as simple as I had a pretty good grasp on the calendar in first year, and my friends would be coming and asking me for advice in terms of what courses do I need to take to make sure I'm on the path for this degree and all this kind of stuff. And I really just enjoyed helping people out and making sure that they were getting to do the things that they needed. And then I was for a year vice president of the UN Society here at MUN, and for a short time I was president of that society as well. And that leadership role I really enjoyed, and I really appreciated being able to give back to the student body that way. And as it turns out, it was actually one of the current science reps and the incoming executive director of advocacy, Sean Kennedy, who I actually worked with 2 summers ago, who first suggested to me, you should look into getting involved with MUNSU. And I looked into it and eventually decided to run for science rep, and the rest is history, I guess.
Here we are today.
Yeah, continued involvement and just getting as involved as I can with it.
Right. All right. So now, one thing I want to ask: as director of finance and services, you'll obviously be chairing the finance and services committee. Which, for anyone who doesn't know, that's where kind of a lot of the more centralized discussions happen, is on the committees. So what are some of the goals and results you want to see? What do you want to work on heading up that committee next year?
Totally. I think that is a really good place where we can really talk about the ideas that we have for the services, talk about what students would like to see for the services. One of the things that we've done recently is we've established a breezeway working group as sort of a subcommittee of the Finance and Services Committee, I guess. And we're already seeing a lot of good ideas coming out of that. It's a bit more of a casual forum where, people just sit around and we chat about the changes that we'd like to see at the breezeway. We talk about some concrete steps that we can take in improving that service. And those types of, brainstorming discussion sessions have really helped us to start developing a plan for what we're going to see in the breezeway over the coming year. And I think that conversations like that should be more regular in the committee meetings, just talking about all of our services and possible changes and things we've been hearing from students around the university. I think that if we could get those lines of communication really open, I think that that's when the committee's going to work best.
And so what have you, one thing that I've always noticed is there is continuity from year to year to year to year. So, and because you've sat on the Finance and Services Committee, what have you learned from Travis, the current Finance and Services, that you want to embody yourself? Like, what are strengths that you recognize in him that you think need to continue on into the position?
Totally. I think one of the really impressive things that you see when you talk to Travis about his position is just the breadth of knowledge about all the services that he just somehow keeps contained up in his head. That's something that I really want to have a lot of discussions with him about, going into my term, just making sure that all of that knowledge doesn't get lost when Travis is done in the position. I want to make sure that's maintained. And for anyone who knows Travis, if you are around him anytime near budget time, you'll hear him speaking his usual line of, the budget is a living, breathing document that should accurately reflect the intentions and priorities of the student body. And as much as we kind of make fun of him for using it as his line, it's totally true, right?
Yeah.
That is 100% what a budget should be at the end of the day.
Yeah, I love it.
And yeah, he backs it up totally. And I think that that's one of the most important things that I can continue following, is that when you're setting up a budget, it has to 100% reflect the priorities of the student body. That's why it's there.
Right, definitely. So now, one sort of a more of a big picture question. If MUNSU was kind of operating to its fullest potential, working at 100%, what do you think that would look like? What would that look like to you?
The main thing for me would just be the amount of involvement and communication that would be happening. I think the structure that we have set up right now can work really, really well. I think it works really well right now, and a lot of people work incredibly hard. But, I would like to see, 20, 30, 40 people at every committee meeting, not just, board members, but students coming out and having their voices heard. I think that if those lines of communication were more open, and if, not just board members, but the student body were getting involved with these committees, with board meetings, and with discussions about, for my position in particular, about our services and about our budget, I think that that's when MUNSU is at its best.
Great. We had to cut this interview short, listeners out there, and there is some questions that we're not going to get to. I do want you to, if you don't mind, speaking to past Devin, or Devin from a year ago, or Devin from before the election, and advice you would give yourself or anybody who would want to pursue involvement with MUNSU, like what kind of advice you would give them?
Sure, yeah. I guess the main one would be that, don't be afraid to approach students. They're people just like us. I'm a bit of a mix of an extrovert and introvert in certain ways, but approaching people is not something that comes particularly easily to me. But of course, during the campaigning process, and as you would know, it's something that you do, and you constantly get out and you talk to students as much as you can.
Just work in that food court.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that you learn is that the majority of people that you go up and talk to are super receptive to just being talked to and having their opinion asked and having these conversations. And I think that that's something that, all of our board members can learn from, to just get out there and talk to students, and that once you get going, it's not that scary, right? You just go up, you have a nice chat with some nice people, and, you learn about what students want to see.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. It was so nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
Oh, that first time I put it off.
I remember the first table I went up to, I was
yeah, the first 2 or 3 are terrifying, and then after that you're like, oh yeah, no, this is fine.
Yeah, people are really approachable.
Yeah.
So the final question, we'll have to let you go, and you can tag Robert in. What would you say if you knew that every single union member was listening right now? What would be the one thing what message you really want to hit home?
I would just say, talk to me. It's every student on this campus at some point or another has been like, oh, I wish they had blank at MUN, or like, oh, I wish I could do this at MUN. And those are exactly the types of things that someone in my position wants to hear, right? Because those are the types of services that we can be offering to students. Those are things that we can make happen. And I think that if, everyone who ever had one of those ideas was like, oh, I should send an email off to the Executive Director of Finance and Services, or, oh, I should pop into the MUNSU office and have a chat about this, then all of a sudden there's this wealth of student knowledge that exists through the union. And I think that's true for, every single position on the board, both executive and non-executive. So yeah, talk to me, talk to us would be the message.
I love that, Devin. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
I wish we could